You know we're live, right?
I'm just the music.
Greetings, geeks. Welcome to episode 480 of Geeks in Space. I'm Rob Commander Taco Malda, and I am here today, ready to greet two of the greatest geeks you're ever gonna greet. I got Chris DeBona.
Hi, everybody.
Rob Roseboom.
Hello.
Everybody's safe and warm.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's super warm. Hey, are you all in a dust storm? Did you move to the Middle East?
You know, I was disappointed. The dust storm was supposed to be on Saturday, and it was not visible that I saw.
Yeah. Well, and
I mean,
we
I was
had...
expecting like a mummy style, bringing the wrath of the old gods sort of dust storm from the way everyone was talking about it. So
it might have been that, but we had a really bad storm Friday into Saturday morning, so it was mostly mud.
Yeah, it was a pretty serious storm. We have a drain in our gutter system that popped loose, and Kathleen ran outside to fix this drain. She comes back in. She could not have been wetter. And then I am like if she had jumped in a pool, she would have been the same level of wet. And she was out there for like 1 minute. And then I'm like, you cannot go back outside because there are quarter-sized hail in this area. You should stay in the house.
Yeah. Well, no, what's funny about that too is I think that a lot of those Michigan houses, they have mud rooms, and you could finally use it for its intended purpose.
Gross.
No, it's so you don't get the house muddy. You take off your shoes. You process. It's like decon, man, coming back into the station.
You got to adjust the pressure so you don't get the bends.
Can I tell you about a dream I had last night?
First, let Rob say what he was going to say.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I was in Canada for some reason. I still don't know why. And there weren't a lot of people. So everyone, all the restaurants were open and the tables were kind of 6-ish feet apart. And people were wearing masks in the restaurant, but not in the line for the restaurant. And there were people everywhere selling KN95 and N95 masks. It was weird. I mean, like, every kind of mask and mask covers and mask fashion. And I was like, this is a very strange dream. How did Canada get it so right?
Canada's pretty smart.
They are, but they don't have that much masks. I mean, these were like hanging from every, kiosk and store, and people were hawking them on the streets. I mean, there was a lot of masks. Like, there was an overproduction of masks.
I like that.
Which is great for Canada,
The I don't know, the T Public or whatever, that genre of we print T-shirts on demand, they are all producing custom masks now, so you can get like funny ones, which is fun.
Yeah,
my mask isn't very cool. It's just a Millennium Falcon like blueprint thing that Geardra made. That's
cool. I saw a young woman. She had a mask and it had a Gucci logo on the side, and I'm like, that's some Sharpie right there. Like, come on. I didn't think that Gucci was making, face masks.
Well,
I mean, I know they've made veils and hijabs, so I don't know.
Depending on how long, don't you start, Malda. Depending on how long this lasts, Gucci very well might start making masks.
There was a really interesting episode of 99 PI a few weeks ago where they talked to a fashion designer who got in tons of trouble for making knockoff designer stuff like that. Like, he's like, do you really think that these brands were putting their logos on T-shirts and the garbage that they were putting? No, he did that. He invented that. So all the rappers that you saw in like the late 90s that were wearing like the Louis Vuitton logos and stuff, but on fashion objects that you would not necessarily associate, that was all bootleg stuff that this guy did. And then he basically got bankrupted by them, and then in the last few years has been rehired by one of them. I don't know the fashion labels, but there was one guy and he got hired. So now his job is to put like, I don't know, Louis Vuitton or Gucci on stuff because they can afford that stuff. People can afford the regular articles of clothing with the fancy logos, and they like the fancy logos.
People love their logos.
So, guys, Sherlock Holmes.
Oh yeah, I actually love this story.
I do too, because it's a weird. The Sherlock Holmes is a great example of a thing that like intersects the public domain, but doesn't intersect the public domain, and has been rebooted so many times and in so many different variations. But this is particularly charming. And is that the girl from Stranger Things?
I don't know. Enola Holmes is based on a series.
I mean, the story is that Netflix is doing a new Sherlock Holmes reboot with what appears to be the girl from Stranger Things, but they are being sued by the estate holders of Sherlock Holmes because she shows emotions in this show. And the argument is that Sherlock Holmes, who was originally written, well outside of the era of the modern copyright era, the early Sherlock Holmes, he was emotionless. But after the war, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle began he learned empathy. His heart grew 2 sizes. So then Sherlock Holmes after that point has emotion, and they argue that the Sherlock Holmes from that era is not the public domain Sherlock Holmes.
That's usually not a side effect of opium. Let me just say, in a morphine addiction. Okay.
Well, he was also fond of the cane. So
the cane, yes, he had a gummy leg, so he needed a cane to get around. And it is the person from Stranger Things. I looked it up while y'all were talking.
I always am interested in that because there's a number of characters, and we talked. I think we talked a little bit about this during the Time Bandits thing. The King Arthur Knights of the Round Table. Like those stories are legend now. They're public domain, and they get just rebooted every few years. And Sherlock Holmes is in the same bucket, right? You get. Robert Downey Jr. gets to be Sherlock Holmes, and then Dennis Kunder Smatch gets to be Sherlock Holmes. Everybody gets to be Sherlock Holmes, for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, Sherlock is just a tad bit more modern. But I see what you're saying. He is almost a mythical figure that everyone knows from history, right?
But from a practical perspective, he is in the last generation of characters that were created and leaked into the public domain.
Right. I think of he's probably equal to Captain Nemo, something like that.
Yeah.
So I have to tell you, I know we talked about this, but I am triggered by this entire discussion about how freaking terrible the last season of Sherlock was.
Oh.
I've never seen a show so undo everything good a show has done with the last, couple of. I mean, really, Game of Thrones and the last season of Sherlock are just in the same place for me. I'm like, what? No.
Was the last season of Sherlock Holmes?
You shouldn't have done it. You should have quit.
Was the last season of Sherlock Holmes where he constantly was going into his brain palace and thinking about stuff?
It wasn't even consistent enough for that. It was just this weird, okay, I know y'all are really popular actors now. Can we just get together for a weekend, shoot some B-roll, and then get the hell out? I mean, it was bad. It was like community theater meets, I don't know, Doctor Who 1980 production values. It was terrible.
I'm sorry, I'm just reading this line in the article that says they claim this copyright specifically covers if Sherlock Holmes caring about Watson being injured or kidnapped.
Yep. Or dogs. Also, apparently Sherlock Holmes, if he likes dogs, that falls under copyright because he did that in one of the later books. It's a weird story. I mean, copyright stuff in general is really weird, but I was kind of unaware that Sherlock Holmes, that his history bisected that the weird, what is it, the Mickey Mouse sort of copyright era, the Disney thing where they keep doing shenanigans to keep Mickey out of the public domain.
Right.
And I got to tell you, man, nothing gets me angry. Like, I feel like we should all just agree. Like, I don't know what the number is. You know, is it 20 years? Is it 50 years? I don't think that it even
74.
it's right, but I mean, like, I don't know what the ethical thing is. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so I feel like the best case scenario, you make a thing. Let's say you're Justin Bieber, and you get a hit when you're 15 years old, like crazy young. Is your work, should that still be in the public domain when you are 80, or not in the public domain when you are 85, 60 years later? Like, even notwithstanding corporations and all of that, even the lifetime of the creator, like, I don't know, man, that just seems like maybe after 60 years, you know, that should just be something we all have now. Like, the public should get that.
Yeah.
Like, everything is just built on everything else.
I thought the 20-year rule was actually a really remarkably solid number, right? At that point, you know, society has put into a given work, you know, and it should start getting things out of it. And also, you know, we go back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, there are 7.5 billion people on this planet. Do you really think that somebody else hasn't thought up some clever detective story about a, you know, spectrum but brilliant detective? I mean, do they forever have to kowtow to some mid-1800s family, you know, for their vision, for their idea? It's just ridiculous. I can guarantee you there's probably another podcast going on right now talking about the extension of copyright in the context of Sherlock. I can almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
You know, probably more popular than ours. And it's
100%.
100%. I mean,
now, the real question is, are there any podcasts less popular than us talking about Sherlock Holmes? That is a harder gamble.
probably. There's 7.5 billion people.
That's true.
There's some schmucks who are trying to keep up with each other by using a dumb podcast on YouTube.
I read a really
guarantee
interesting story about this, and they were talking about like for like where is the case where this is fair? And they were talking about, okay, so let's say you're a session musician who recorded like he played drums or bass on some hit song from the 60s. Okay, like that's the guy you want to protect. You don't need to protect Paul McCartney. You know, the guys who had the songwriting credits, those guys are fine. They made millions of dollars over decades. So, okay, the guy, like, you know, that was the, you know, he recorded, he's a session musician. He's making a few grand a year off of that. Okay, it'd be cool if that guy, but still, after 50 years, I don't know.
And we are talking about, I hate to say it, I mean, 2 hours of his life in a studio somewhere, and somehow society should be paying him 70 years later. I mean, I don't mean to devalue people's work, but again, 7.5 billion people can pick up a drum kit at some point in their life and pound out a riff.
I think
it's like the Pachelbel Cannons rap.
Yeah.
You ever see this YouTube video?
Totally.
Where it's like they play Pachelbel's Canon in the context of, you know, do you have the time to listen to me? It's like he nails it on every modern song. It's like, you know, I don't know, man. You know, it's like, so Tchaikovsky's, I think it's Tchaikovsky, 1812 Overture, right? Sony, under the Versailles Sarabande label, did this incredible index recording of an orchestra playing it. And this was in the 80s, and it's still like my go-to, you know, one. And, you know, I bought the CD, you know, I'd stream it if I, you know, had any idea how streaming really worked. But yeah, no, it's like, it is my go-to CD. I paid for that CD one time. I don't feel bad at all, right? It's like, how often does someone need to get paid? You know, I mean, because we're talking about money flowing from 7.5 billion people to one person.
And I for me, like, even the money piece, I get that the money piece is a big part of it. But what makes me angry is like sampling music, like samples from the 60s, samples from the 70s. And that, but like, we don't really know what sampling will do to video yet. like samples in audio is really interesting, and like in like music built on sampling is it's the basis of so much pop music. It's hard for us to know what video will do. We now have a century of film in history. We should, like, art should be able to build on that. Like, I want to see just creatively, artistically, like, if we want to do Geeks in Space about a movie made in 1982, it seems like it's been long enough that you should just be able to do Mystery Science Theater, style recordings of something made from 1982.
And what do we find? We can do 6 to 7 seconds of it. Right.
And we're not doing like sampling. Okay, but like somebody needs to do, artistically speaking, somebody's going to figure out ways to remix film and video in just amazing, cool ways. And they're limited by that, by these laws. And that just makes me angry because, like, money is one thing, but suppressing creative thought, that really angers me.
It's like, imagine if you went to go solve a mathematical problem and you couldn't use addition, because, that's owned by this family over here. Every time you want to use calculus, you have to give a quarter penny to the Newton and Leibniz estates. It's like, it's really what we're talking about for, like, okay. So when did Conan Doyle live? Conan Doyle. Well, let's figure this out.
He died in the 30s, right?
He died in 1930. Okay. So 1930 inventions.
Called it.
This is what we're gonna do. All right. Yeah, that was really well done, by the way. Okay, Scotch tape, right? Came out in 1930. What else? The analog computer. So every single drum effect, guitar effect, and all the rest. If someone's got to give a quarter to Vannevar Bush and MIT. Okay. It's like, the jet engine came out and it was first developed in 1930. So
that's a good comparison too, is that like patents, even with all the shenanigans that you get in the meds industry, like, we added a different binder, so we get to extend our patent on this important life-giving drug for another 10 years. That's evil, is what that is, honestly. This is just crappy. But yeah, I mean, we've agreed that, like, if you invent an invention, that only gets to last 10 or 15 years, right? Why does Mickey Mouse get to last? We're closing in on a century of Mickey Mouse.
And remember, the whole point of patent law and trademark and copyright is to further the development of the useful arts and sciences, right? And if you can't build on something, if you can't incorporate that thing into your work 25 years later, you can't advance art and science.
Right. And Paul's Boutique, Daft Punk, Girl Talk, these are original creations that get in legal shenanigans over that stuff, and it breaks my heart.
You couldn't do Paul's Boutique today because it would cost millions of dollars in samples. So
all right. What we need to do then is to go back to school to study ninja studies.
Yes, let's back.
Good idea.
To the thing. Where's our ninja studies?
This is you, Rob.
It is. I'm a ninja.
You should be American ninja. Cool. Weren't you and Hammer going to make a movie once upon a time?
Yeah, but then Chris Farley stole our premise.
Dick.
Yeah,
you made him pay though.
Our hook was that we would always stop to eat bowls of chili. Anyway, moving on to
the proper American ninja exists on 3 things: honor, skill with the blade, and chili.
Makes sense.
Good, it's good chili. So yeah, evidently you can. I didn't really read this article, so.
So really, it's no different than Slashdot.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, I guess.
Yeah, guy went to school.
Evidently, you can get a degree in ninja studies, and you can. I don't know if part of the degree is arguing whether or not ninjas actually existed.
Yeah,
as a group. But hey,
it feels like it'd be a really good interdisciplinary thing, though, right? Because you could like go to the art classes and learn how to make throwing stars or a gi. and you could go to like a book.
If you had read the article, it has been a fulfilling 2 years because I lived in a mountainous farming village as an Iga to study ninja and pursue my research in my own way. So this is like a self-directed studies master's.
This is a rich kid.
Yeah.
This is a rich kid.
He's a real role model for graduate students who study ninja because the way he blended with the local community.
And then disappeared in a cloud of smoke.
Oomph. Ninjas are believed to have originated in the early 14th century. The course was aimed at learning about the ninja, not to become one.
No, that's a different school.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of folklore involved in it, and basically our idea of a ninja is, completely bunk.
Wait,
for sure.
I gotta check something here. Are those Crocs?
I hope so. No, but kind of.
I gotta tell you, that looks like a Croc to me.
They're close. I bet they're knockoffs.
Yeah, they're like clogs.
Did the ninjas wear knockoff Crocs?
Well, they had to wait until they got out of copyright. Like back in the 1300s when clogs were originally copyrighted by the Croc dynasty.
Okay, you see this here? That's a label from the Japanese equivalent of Home Depot.
I'm pretty sure ninjas invented the rubber sandal. So,
the tabby-footed sandal
because they're super quiet.
Checks out.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. I think this is actually a joke. I think this is.
I kind of hope so.
So there was a group in Sacramento. They used to basically do these, they would do these pranks, and one was dumpstertarians. How they were a group of people who would only eat from dumpsters.
Freegans.
Well, freegans, but specifically dumpstertarians. They talked about how Sacramento is one of the world's leading places for dumpstertarianism.
I could see that.
So they had all this stuff going on. And like every once in a while there'd be a story in the Sacramento Bee and you're like, oh, no, it's those guys again.
For sure, there's ninjutsu dojos in the United States.
Sure.
That you can go and they will train you to be a ninja, whatever they decided that is, and there were people that were hired as mercenaries and spies who weren't samurais, they weren't ronin, they weren't, your typical warrior who I guess could be classified as ninjas, but, the whole idea of the black masks and running around and even the shurikens and stuff, that's pretty much a product of the 80s teenagers' love of that idea.
Right. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did more to advance the nunchuck than ninjas.
Exactly. Right. Like nunchucks are used to beat rice off of the hull. No one really picked those up to fight people with them. It's basically like the same thing with the flail. The flail originally is an agricultural tool. Most medieval weapons are agricultural tools that they just put a bigger blade on or added spikes to,
I could hit somebody with this.
Right.
I mean, everything eventually evolves just to be, a weapon.
This is where we have it wrong. Crocs, he's not using Crocs. Crocs came from ninjas.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I think that the Crocs might actually be in control. They're sentient Crocs. They're just using him now to move. They're like parasites.
It's an interesting theory.
That's certainly it's an idea. I'll call that an idea.
Excellent. Hey, Rob, stop microwaving your books. The library doesn't like it.
This article I did read.
Yeah.
Because this is in Grand Rapids, not too far away from our old stomping grounds. So evidently one of the things that people are doing in West Michigan to ensure that they don't get the coronavirus is microwaving their books when they get them out of the library.
Oh, well, at least they have a picture of a microwave in case you don't know what one is.
Yeah. They want you to know we're not using microwave guns or, I-beams or anything. We're actually putting them inside the appliance. So they are microwaving books to kill the virus in West
Like you do.
Michigan. And it turns out the moisture in the binding, the moisture in the cover,
And the RFID sensor made of metal.
yeah, they don't hold up so well after it's been microwaved, even if you just use the popcorn setting.
What if I hit defrost? Does that kill
That
the
might be
virus?
okay.
Yeah, even
So-
even at the lower power levels, still not good.
Yep, still don't microwave your book that contains a tiny piece of metal. It's burning the pages. In Grand Rapids, people want to read.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So Grand Rapids, for those few listeners we have that are listening, is the home of the Amway empire, right? And so, the Amway thing is everywhere in Grand Rapids. So I'm surprised they're like, listen, stop spraying it with Amway crap. And isn't Amway, capitalizing on the COVID thing? You'd think they would. It'd be their kind of scam, right? So
Probably.
Oh, I'm sure they have some sort of dietary supplement now that you can take it.
cleaning product.
They're
That's
trying
right.
to take over the Herbalife.
Oh,
Man, that's grim.
nice. So there's a cool article in there on neomorphism if you're interested in design, language, that sort of thing. I'm always interested in that sort of stuff. We're now
the font thing?
No, the font thing's in there too. I was going to do that next. The neomorphism article is cool just because it's, we went from the skeuomorphism in the mid 2000s to everything being super flat to now the new design trend is toward what they call neomorphism, which is basically flat but with a different emphasis on dimensional light. It's interesting. I follow these sorts of things because I'm interested in it. I don't know that it's better or worse. I honestly don't care. I just would like the buttons to have, like do the right things. I don't really care if they're blue or green or shaded, but it's a neat story.
Let me just say 3 words. Kai Power Tools.
Totally. I was actually thinking about this.
This is not going to age well.
No, I was thinking about it exactly in the context of all the design work that I did in the late 90s. Everything had little shadows like that. I mean, that's just how you did it. Let's add some curves and some blends. I mean, it's all but coming back, man. If you look at my my Enlightenment themes, they were all doing these sorts of things. I mean, but it was heavy textures, but that was purely to show off the fact that we had the ability to put bitmaps in our window decorations. But the Goldman Sachs font story is even crazier. You're not allowed to criticize Goldman Sachs using their font. And so what a weird way to protect yourself. Like, we're going to make a font. Like, if you could get Helvetica and make that your own, no more criticizing us in Helvetica.
So let's talk about open source fonts for a minute. So the open font license, the pre-release version of the license from the creators, they wanted a license that was both open source friendly, but also would keep people from doing those CDs full of fonts.
Yeah.
They didn't want the shovelware. And I'm like, well, okay, well, that won't be open source, but okay. And then they also added a clause, by using this font, you agree to accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior.
Like
And
you do.
I was like, I'm not religious, but people are religious. Good on you. I'm glad you found a way. But you should know if you put it in your font, it's just going to keep people from using your font.
No,
And
it's
they're
not.
like,
Nobody's
really?
going to give a shit.
Well, it turns out people really care about licensing. Let's just go with that. Okay?
All right, but I'm
My
not
whole
gonna.
career-
I'm gonna. If I choose to make my sweet poster and make my T-shirt, I'm not gonna still believe in magic just because the copyright told me I had to.
Well, I mean, by using that font, you agree that to accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior. I'm just saying that's what the font says. So, guess you're going to heaven.
Thought crime.
No, but seriously. So I told them, I was like, the problem is this is actually not a great way to license it. So they pulled it. But then this Goldman Sachs thing came out, and I'm like, Goldman Sachs, it's Goldman Sachs. They're gonna Goldman Sachs up anything they do.
Absolutely.
Right? So
It's an interesting story, but again, I mean, it's weird that all of our stories today seem to be about abusing copyrights, to limit freedom. Weird. Speaking of abusing things that are in common demand, TikTok got busted for spying on folks' clipboards, which is
I couldn't believe this.
yeah,
man.
how blatant. They blamed Google, by the way.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's our fault.
Maybe. I don't have their source code.
Listen, I have to tell you, I don't publish on TikTok, but I have, like, my daughter does, and a bunch of people do. That is an addicting app.
Oh, for sure.
Like, addictive in a way that it's just like a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, and it's fun. There's some really fun stuff on TikTok. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, you're not wrong. They have.
I mean, there's that moment where you're like, "Oh, these people are way too young. I'm out." But it's like, there's just a lot of people having a good time.
It's unbridled,
like,
creative fun, and you know what they're not doing is they're not worrying about copyright.
They're not worrying about copyright because ByteDance has already negotiated all the licenses around the songs.
Well, and also a lot of this stuff is short. So, like nobody's gonna get into too much shenanigans over that.
Yeah, they don't care about copyright. They just want to spy on you.
Right.
Well, yeah, whatever. But like, no, seriously,
whatever.
They figured out the copyright licensing a long time ago. Musical.ly cut the deals. They brought the deals with them into TikTok. And so TikTok is able to have people just doing their creativity and their dancing, and they're paying less than Spotify for those 60-second segments. So yeah,
it's pretty amazing. I had one more, which is not a big thing,
but spying bad,
spying bad, man. I mean, that's bad. That's the thing. That's the thing of the story. They're literally just looking at your clipboard and what are you keeping in your clipboard? You ever keeping anything you don't want? You ever keeping something you don't want the Chinese government to have in your clipboard? Because I got to tell you, man, Facebook, they've been busted for sniffing your clipboard. Everybody gets busted for sniffing your clipboard. And maybe they're doing it for cool things. Like, I have a longstanding feature request from Reddit. If I click on the button that says post a link and I have a URL in my clipboard, that should be automatically thrown into that field. I shouldn't have to cut and paste. But in order to do that, you have to sniff my clipboard. Yeah. But that's a moment where I actually agreed that I want that to happen.
Yeah. So in the Android version of Chrome, if you start a new tab or you start up Chrome and you have a URL in your clipboard, it has a little drop down saying, do you want to go to that URL? Okay. But yeah, it's like, I can think of some like use cases where sniffing the clipboard makes sense.
Absolutely.
But then storing it, transmitting it over the wire.
Well, that's the whole fundamental thing, right? It's when you transmit it off when you ship it out, and then it's purely a matter of what they're doing with your data. And therein lies the fundamental problem that we see in the internet in 2020. What are they doing with our data? I had one other one. Oh, there's an interesting story in there about watching movies in Fortnite, which goes back to the thing that I've been talking about, watching movies virtually with friends. Plex now has a feature to watch with people, which we should totally try out sometime, because you can, if one person pauses it, then everybody gets the pause. So you all stay on the same point. You guys want to pause and take a break, although I do feel like now that we know how to do streams the way that we've been doing them with Geeks in Space, if we just weren't streaming, we could just watch a movie that way, and that would work too. Anyway, I like the idea of I'm seriously jonesing for movies, like going to the theater and having the whole experience, because Tenet is coming out in a few weeks, theoretically,
or not.
And or not. And I don't know if I'm going to, feel comfortable going to see it in a movie theater, but I miss the experience. I miss sitting in a room and laughing with a group of people, and ideally eating popcorn and, I guess in my case, peanut M&Ms, and maybe a Slurpee.
Well, let me tell you something. You're probably not going back to the movies till January of 2021, or maybe July. So, you know what, Rob? You're pretty handy. Have you considered converting one of your rooms into a proper movie theater?
My office is pretty posh right now.
I mean, just saying, get a couple of, used couches off Craigslist that don't smell too bad, and, paint it black and put up some.
I
some
now
felt,
have
felt.
I have my office. If I go 5 feet in front of myself, I have a 55-inch TV and 7 speakers pointed at one chair in the dead center of the room. It's not a matter of lacking.
Do you black out the light?
I don't. I have curtains. I have curtains and everything, but I actually have found I don't need to block out the lights. Although in Michigan it's dark at 4:45 in December, so you definitely don't need it at that time of year. But like I can get away without turning the lights all the way off and be fine. But no, what I miss is there's a person in the back 2 rows over that coughs, and then 17 strangers in a corner laugh at a joke I didn't get, or the whole audience cheers when Cap gets to wield Mjolnir or something. Like that's the stuff that makes the movie a different thing for me. I like that. And I know that comes with the crappy things too, where people's cell phones go off and there's always that lady 2 rows in front of you scrolling through Facebook. And I hate that. But, for me anyway, on the whole, the good outweighs the bad. And I miss it.
I don't miss sitting in a room with a bunch of strangers, to tell you the truth. I like the big screen. I like the sound. I like someone bringing me popcorn.
For sure.
That's what I like about the theater. But, people I don't care so much about. Although, one of the last movies I saw, I did have an elderly woman try to climb into the seat with me because, obviously I'm hard to miss.
Adorable.
Did she think that you were in her seat? Or
No.
was she just senile?
Her husband, it was dark. They were late. I guess they couldn't see us. Her husband.
Did she think you were her husband and she was like all over you, thinking, "Hey, honey, we're at the movie theater. Let's get busy."
No, her husband was hitting my wife in the legs with his walker, trying to get into the seats as well. So they were both troubled. Let's say.
Yeah, Tenet is going to be the first one that I'm going to think about, but I don't know that I'll be ready. But then, like a month later down the line, there's Bill and Ted. And these are.
I'm not dying of COVID for freaking Bill and Ted. I got to tell you.
And yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll have to look at what the rates are.
You don't know. If the ratings are really solid, I'll risk getting COVID for this movie.
I mean, if it's got 98 Rotten Tomatoes,
you got a wife and kids you have to look after.
I'm not dying of COVID, but I might get it for Bill and Ted.
For Bill, for Keanu.
I'm feeling left out. There's been 2 million people, 2.5 million people, 500,000 million people dead in the world. I mean, God, shouldn't I be one of them?
I mean, I might have risked COVID for like the last Avengers movie. I might have risked that, but no, I wouldn't.
Oh, maybe that's where it came from. It was the last Avengers movie.
It could be. See, I mean, I guess I would look at what the infection rates are in Ann Arbor at that point. A month from now, I don't know. Like right now, if you're wearing a mask, it seems like around here it's not too bad. But, Michigan is also at the bottom of that curve thing that most of the rest of the country seems to be spiking.
Yeah, well, that's good. Speaks well of Whitmer.
Whitmer did great. If she just would have like said the UP had a different set of rules as the bottom half of the state, maybe we would have, like a lot of people would have been a little less cranky, but then again, probably not.
I just typed in COVID in Michigan. Coronavirus outbreak at Michigan College Bar infects at least 85 people.
Yeah, we
Dude,
had a couple,
where is that?
Traverse City and Lansing, they've had a couple outbreaks again.
Yep.
But nothing compared to, the big 3, Texas, Florida, and Arizona, who are working their best to go ahead and get to the top of the list.
Wow. All right, folks. I'm going to say goodbye.
So.
Fare thee well, Chris DeBona.
See you then.
Oh, I YouTubed myself playing Astroneer.
Astroneer, all right.
It was very exciting. I've been really enjoying the new automation.
Post it into general. I'll put it on Taco Zone, man.
That's really kind of you. I will.
Kind of me. Yeah, okay. I'm so generous. Jake and Elon will love it. All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Rob.
Yep. See you later.
This has been episode 480 of Geeks in Space. Take care, be well. Tomorrow night, we're going to be watching The Last Starfighter. It's going to be epic.